This video, we will just simply have a further discussion on study tips, time management tips, and things that worked for us when we were at school, and obviously that we felt helped us through our grade 11 and our matric years. So, firstly, I'd just like to point out for me and for the rest of the tutors, time management was key. I think that's something that's so underrated. People don't actually understand how important it is to manage your time. I know often schools will give you like a study skills session and we all take it as a big joke and no one really pays attention. But when you realize how well you can plan your time and how much more beneficial your studying will be, I think you'll realize that time management really is key to your success at school. So, firstly, we recommend that you plan your time required per subject. So if you struggle on one subject, um, as we've said, you should take into account your familiarity and your comfortableness with each subject. So if you struggle with a subject, put more time into it, manage your time, put more resources and time into that subject. While if you're better at another subject, maybe spend less time on that subject and rather focus on the sections and the subjects that you find difficult. Often we concentrate on things that we enjoy and the things that we find easy because it's easier to study that, and we often leave the parts that are harder. And yeah, for us, we found that concentrating on the harder stuff and the stuff that we find more difficult actually helped us more. Secondly, keep on top of your work. As you enter into matric in grade 11, it is a good idea to allocate a certain amount of time per week to consolidate the work covered during that week. So this could be a certain amount of time per week or a certain amount of time per day. It's just a good idea to consolidate the work that you're doing in class, consolidate your tests that you've written, tests that you've got back, go through your work, make sure you understand everything that you're covering in class. It'll make your studying when you need to study for exams and tests in the future so much easier. You'll just be recalling knowledge rather than learning it all over again. Thirdly, don't procrastinate. I know in high school, procrastination is the biggest enemy. Get started on your work early. Often, even if you do a tiny portion of the work early, 2-3 weeks before it's due, maybe even a week before it's due, it really helps you get started. Once you've got a little bit done, you'll feel more confident, you'll feel better about yourself, about the subject, about the section, and it'll actually make it easier to complete the work and complete the task. Fourthly, keep your study notes up to date. Don't cram study. So as I've said, rather consolidate your work as you cover it. Keep your notes up to date. Don't cram the entire section the day before the exam or the day before the test. It doesn't work. It might get you through that test, but 3 months down the line, you won't remember what you've cram studied. You need to keep on top of your work as you do it and constantly keep a checkup on what you're doing and making sure that you're on top of it. Then another important point is to keep organized. Make sure you know the content you need to cover. So if you're studying for exams, have a checklist and check off each section of the subject as you go through it. Know what you need to cover. Day before the exam, go through the checklist and cover everything in your head that you've covered and what you still need to cover, and make sure that you cover everything. Don't leave anything out. I know often we'll say to ourselves, oh, I'll leave that section out, I don't really think it'll come up. And often those are the sections that do come up. So rather cover all your bases, you'll feel more confident going into the exam and your results will be so much better. Also, you need to know where your notes are for future reference. So you need a file in an organized manner, or if you keep your notes on your laptop, ensure that you know where all of your notes are, so that 3 months, 4 months down the line, when you need to find your notes, you know exactly where to get them. Then this is an NB point. For me, and I know for the other tutors, so many students at school study for long periods and they really don't gain much out of it. The four of us studied smart. Well, we'd like to say we studied smart and not hard. Contrary to belief, studying long hours does not work for all people. So if you want to study a full day, rather study 45-minute sessions with half an hour breaks in between, because sitting down for an entire day, you will not be able to engage with your work in the way that you would in shorter sessions. Now, obviously, that's different for everyone, and there are people out there who can study for longer periods of time, and you need to work out which works better for you. But don't just think that studying long hours will result in better results. Then the next point, which was very important for me specifically, and I really found that this worked for me, is to make your own notes. So the textbook or the school notes that are given to you are great, but in order to fully grasp the concepts, you need to summarize them in a way that you understand them, so that when you go back to study them, they are written in ways that you fully understand, and therefore you'll remember them and be able to apply it. Sharing notes often helps. If you want to share with your friends, you'll gain new perspectives, the way that they think. You'll be able to incorporate that in the way you think. There are platforms where you can share student notes, such as Stuvia or Google Drives, where student notes are uploaded and can be shared. And another important way to share your knowledge and to share perspectives is study groups. If you were to get together with a few friends, I found this quite helpful, even if it's over a phone call, and just go through things together, maybe do some questions together. Often your friends or teachers or tutors will have a very different way to solve a question or to look at a question and to the way that you do. And often that will help you out, and you will be able to understand it better than you would have. Now, this next point is probably the most important point in your grade 11 and 12 years. Past papers are a must. You have to do past papers in order to do well. Not all your studying takes place from notes. For subjects like maths and science, past papers are key. Firstly, past papers allow you to see the way that questions are asked. In subjects like maths and science, questions are often asked in the same way year in and year out. Obviously, the content changes and the way in which the questions are asked sometimes differs, but the main concepts are there year in and year out. I know personally in my matric year, before my matric final exams, I did between probably 15 and 20 maths papers and 15 to 20 science past papers. Now that's just final papers. Obviously for prelims or for preliminary exams, mid-year exams, I did probably 15 to 20 prelim past papers. So I really believe in past papers and how much they help, and you often learn new concepts from your past papers and not just from your notes or your textbook. And then this is another NB point. Often people try and put studying into a bubble. They try and say, you need to study for 45 minutes, you need to study for an hour, you need to take breaks, you need to go and exercise. Often these points are given to us at school and we are expected to just follow them. However, we believe that you need to know what works for you. There's some people out there that can sit at their desk from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, and they study perfectly like that. They take it all in, and that works for them. Some other people need 45 minutes of studying and half an hour of being outside or talking or engaging with other people or simply just chilling. And you need to understand what works for you, and you need to stick to that. Don't be swayed by what we're told and how we're told to study at school, because often people don't fit that criteria. They don't fit the bubble, and it doesn't work for some people. And then fourth last point, don't be afraid to ask for help from friends, tutors, and teachers. Often we feel embarrassed, or we don't want people to think that we don't know what's going on, or we don't want people to think that we're not smart or not smart enough to understand it. Teachers, tutors, friends, we're all there, or your friends, your teachers, tutors are all there to help you out. There are people who have more knowledge than you, and there are people that have less knowledge than you. And if we all share that knowledge, it really goes a long way in helping students understand the work and understand the way in which it'll be tested. And quite honestly, it'll make a big difference in your results and your matric final results. Then continue to do small amounts of work intermittently throughout your holidays. So I know for my long holidays in matric, I didn't work day in and day out, but maybe an hour a day I covered a certain subject, just revising, not heavy work, nothing strenuous, simply just going over things to keep it fresh in your mind. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have experienced going on a December holiday and coming back in January and you remember absolutely nothing of what you covered the year before. Now, that is something that happens if you don't continuously go over your work. And if you continuously go over your work on the holiday, it'll be much easier to study it and to recall it when you return back to school or write your exams. And then second last point, stay motivated. I know in your matric year, often your tests are quite difficult, or your projects or your tutorials are quite difficult. That is simply in order to prepare you for your final exams. Having written the final exams, I can say that, and I'm sure all of the tutors will agree with me in saying that schools prepare you well for your final exams. Your final exams are not impossibly hard and they are not extremely easy. They are set at a level where students are able to obtain the marks that they aim to obtain. And that brings us to the last point, where personally I found pushing myself to do questions that were harder or seemed to be as higher order questions really helped me. You learn to answer questions that may not make up the entire exam or even the majority of the exam, but they will make up those few marks or the 10 or 20% of the marks that will get you from a 70 to an 80 or an 80 to a 90. So when you're studying, push yourself to do the harder questions. Try the harder examples. It can only benefit you. And just lastly, on the stay motivated point, I'd just like to say, personally in grade 11 and 12, I set myself goals. By the end of grade 11, I wanted to achieve a certain mark in each subject. I wanted to achieve academic certain criteria and certain levels of academic achievement. And I did the same for my matric year. And I think it's very important to know where you're heading. Set realistic goals. If you struggle with a subject, set a realistic goal. Don't push yourself to achieve 95% in a subject that you struggle with. Rather focus on your subjects where your subjects are subjects that you are maybe not as good at. Set realistic goals, and for those that you are competent with and do well in, set higher goals so that when you achieve them you feel a sense of accomplishment, and this will help you stay motivated throughout your grade 11 and your grade 12 year. I know it helped me a lot, and having spoken to the other tutors, I know that it helped them a lot. And if you have a chat to your friends or your teachers or your tutors, most of them, if not all of them, will tell you that it's very important to have goals and to have a reachable target that you aim for in the near future.